My name is High Overseer Zethar Vaughn, and I am writing this confession from a cell. On a world I once planned to burn. Walls around me are soft and white. The humans who guard me smile when they bring my food. They do not hate me. That is the worst part. You cannot hate what you pity, and they pity me the way a man pities a spider he has trapped under a glass. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how the greatest empire in 3 galactic arms destroyed itself. A single afternoon. It began in the war chamber of my flagship, the Eternal Talon. I stood before a glowing map of a small blue planet and I laughed. My 7 advisors laughed with me because I was laughing. That is how command works in the Kathan Dominion. You do not question the one who wears the black crown of conquest. You laugh when he laughs and you die when he points. I had worn that crown for 600 years. I had conquered 1,847 worlds. I had never tasted defeat, not once, not even a small one. My name was whispered in fear across half the galaxy. Mothers of soft species used my name to frighten their young into obedience. I was proud of that. I was proud of everything. The planet on the map was called Earth. Our scouts had watched it for 20 years. 20 years is nothing to us. We live for 1,000. In those 20 years, the humans had barely left their own moon. They fought each other over strips of land and bits of shiny metal. They burned the bones of dead plants to power their machines. They had nearly 200 separate governments, and none of them could agree on anything, not even what to call the seasons. A child could conquer such a world. I intended to do it in 3 days. I turned to my chief advisor, an old Kathan named Kelvin. His plates had gone gray with age, and his eyes were the dull yellow of a dying star. He had served my father before me, and my grandfather before him. He was the only being alive who could speak to me without asking permission first. He was not laughing. Overseer, he said, and his voice was low and careful. The old species have sent warnings. The Var, the Lumendrith. Even the architects broke their silence. The architects have not spoken in 10,000 years, I said. They spoke yesterday. I felt a tiny cold thread pass through my chest. I pushed it away. What did they say? Kelvin looked down. They said you do not understand what Earth has become. I laughed again, and this time the laugh was louder because I wanted the cold thread to go away. Old ghosts whispering old nonsense. They humans are monkeys with guns, perhaps. The architects have gone senile at last. My lord, the scouts reported anomalies in the planet's energy readings. Patterns we cannot explain, signals that seem to move backward through time. Backward through time, I repeated, and I smiled with all my teeth. Kelvin, my old friend, you have served long. Perhaps too long. Go rest. I will conquer this world without your worried face at my shoulder. He bowed and left. I would never see him again. He took his own life that night and left a note I did not read until much later. The note said only, I am sorry I tried. I ordered the fleet assembled, 12,000 warships, 40 million shock troops, plasma engines that could boil the oceans of a small moon, dreadnoughts with cores of captured stars. It was the largest force ever gathered in the history of my people, and I was gathering it to stamp on an anthill. I wanted the galaxy to see. I wanted the old species to tremble. I wanted the Conquer to know that the Kathan did not negotiate with dirt. Messages came in from every corner of known space. The Var sent a delegation that wept openly in my throne room and begged me to turn back. I had them executed for cowardice. The Lumendreth, who are made of living light, sent a single sentence that read, "You are about to wake something that should stay asleep." I had the message deleted. Conquered itself, the Great Council of Civilizations passed a resolution condemning my invasion. I burned their flag on live broadcast across our entire empire, and my people cheered. I was a god then, or I believed I was. The difference I have learned is everything. The fleet gathered at the edge of Kathan space in a great black cloud of ships so thick that the stars behind them vanished. I walked through the docking bays and greeted my captains. I touched the heads of young soldiers who would never see home again, though none of us knew it yet. I gave speeches about glory and destiny and the natural right of the strong to rule the weak. Soldiers roared, they beat their chests with their fists until the metal floors shook. I remember one young soldier in particular. He could not have been more than 40 cycles old. His plates were still bright, still unscratched. He looked at me with shining eyes and said, "Overseer, will I see Earth? Will I set foot on their soil?" "You will," I told him, and I placed my hand on his shoulder. "You will walk where no Kathan has walked before, and the humans will kneel at your feet." He smiled so wide I thought his face might split. His name was Tellan. I learned it later from the roster after he was gone when I tried to count the dead. We entered the slipstream at the high turn of the second moon. The journey to Sol would take 3 days. I spent those 3 days in my private chambers, studying maps of Earth, choosing which cities I would spare and which I would melt. I had a list of the humans I wanted captured alive for display. There was a man who led one of their larger nations, a woman who led another, a few of their scientists and artists whose work our spies had found interesting. I wanted them in cages. I wanted to walk past them each morning and smile. On the 3rd day, I put on my war armor. It was black and red, shaped like the bones of a predator, and it had been passed down from my grandfather's grandfather. I stood before the long mirror in my chamber and I looked at myself, and I thought, there has never been a being more powerful than I am in this moment. I was wrong. I had never been more wrong about anything in my entire life. The fleet came out of the slipstream at the far edge of the Sol system, past the outer ring of ice and rock that the humans called the Uit. The plan was simple. We would sweep inward in formation, destroy any defenses we met, and arrive at Earth within 12 hours. The humans would have almost no time to react. They would see us coming, and then we would be upon them. That was the plan. The moment we dropped out of slipspace, every single sensor on every single ship lit up at once, not with detection warnings, with the calm, polite notification that we had already been found, that our positions had been logged, that our engine signatures had been cataloged down to the smallest vibration, that our weapons had been counted, that our shields had been measured. For how long, the sensors did not say. I stood on the bridge of the eternal Talon, and the cold thread came back into my chest, thicker this time. I looked at my new chief advisor, a young Kathan named Verk, who had replaced Kelvin only that morning. Verk's face had gone the pale green of fear. "Overseer," he whispered, "they knew we were coming." "Of course they knew," I said too loud. "We are 12,000 warships. A blind child could see us." But that was not what he meant, and I knew it was not what he meant. Then a signal came through the main channel, a single human voice, male, calm, speaking in perfect Kathan dialect, a dialect we had never broadcast, a dialect that exists only our deepest military files. The voice said, "Turn around, this is the only warning you will get. We have mapped every ship in your fleet. We know the name of every soldier on board. We know what they had for their last meal. Go home, please." The bridge went silent. Every officer looked at me. I should have turned around, I know that. Now, if I had turned around in that moment, Talon, the young soldier, would have lived, Verk would have lived, 40 million souls would have slept safe in their bunks that night, dreaming of a glory they would never see but would never need. But I was a god, or I thought I was, and gods do not turn around because a monkey tells them to. I raised my hand. I looked at my fleet. On the great screen, 12,000 points of light stretching across the dark. I opened my mouth to give the order that would end my civilization. I said, "All ships attack formation. Advance." And somewhere on a small blue planet, far ahead of us in the dark, someone began to laugh. The laugh was the first thing that broke me, though I did not know it yet. It came through the open channel like a small warm sound from a kitchen, as if the person on the other end had just heard a mildly amusing joke from a friend. It was not the laugh of someone who had just been threatened by 12,000 warships. It was the laugh of someone who had been waiting a long time for a party to finally begin. Then the channel closed and my fleet began to move. The outer ring of my formation held 400 scout vessels. These were my eyes and ears, the fastest ships in the Dominion, flown by my best young pilots. Their job was to race ahead of the main fleet, map the inner system, and find the human defensive lines. I gave the order to advance, and 400 small green lights began to slide forward across the great screen. 30 seconds later, all 400 of them went out. Not exploded, not damaged, out. One moment they were there, and the next moment there was only empty space where they had been. The sensors did not register a single shot fired. There was no heat, no light, no debris. The ships simply stopped existing in my field of view. Verk, my new advisor, made a small sound in his throat. It was not a word. It was the noise a child makes when it sees something its mind cannot accept. "Find them," I said. My voice sounded strange in my own ears, high and thin. "Find my scout ships." The sensor officers bent over their stations. Their hands moved fast. I watched the back of a young woman's head, a Catherine technician named Sella, and I saw her plates go pale all the way up to her neck. She turned around slowly and she looked at me with eyes that had seen something no living being should ever see. "Overseer," she said, "I found them." "Where?" "They are in a star system called Balin." I did not know that name. I looked at Verk. Verk was checking the star charts, and his hands were shaking so badly he could barely work the controls. He turned to me at last and he said, "Balin is 400 light years from here." 400 light years. My scout ships had been moved across 400 light years of space in less than 1 minute. I tried to form a Response, my mouth opened. No sound came. Out, finally I said the only thing I could think of. How? Sella shook her head. I do not know. Overseer, the ships are intact. The crews are alive. They are sending distress signals. They say they do not know where they are either, they say. One moment they were advancing toward Earth, and the next moment they were inside a dead star system with no way home. Every eye on the bridge turned to me. I felt the weight of 10,000 years of Catherine pride pressing down on my shoulders. I could not retreat. I could not even pause. If I showed weakness now in front of my officers, the story would spread through the fleet within an hour. Commanders would begin to whisper. Captains would begin to question. The Dominion would crack from within. So I did the thing a god does when a god is afraid. I doubled the attack. All main battle groups advance, I said. Weapons ready. Target the inner planets. Show these humans what happens when they touch our ships. The fleet surged forward. I watched them go. 11,600 warships, still more than enough to conquer 10 worlds, moving in a tight, deadly formation toward the center of the Sol system. And then the humans spoke again. It was not the calm male voice this time. It was a different voice, younger. A female voice, and she sounded delighted. She sounded the way a child sounds when her favorite show comes on. She said, "Oh, they are still coming. Corinne, you owe me 50 credits, I told you the lizard man would push through." A second voice, older female, said, "The background, he is not a lizard. Look at the plates, he is more like a beetle. Beetle man owes me 50 credits either way, Corinne." Fine, fine, let me get the popcorn. The channel closed. My bridge crew stared at the speakers in frozen horror. I did not understand half the words. I did not know what credits were, or popcorn, or what a lizard was, or a beetle, but I understood the tone perfectly. It was the tone of a spectator, the tone of someone watching a sport, the tone of a being who had never, even for 1 second, considered us a threat. I had never been so insulted in my life. I had also never been so afraid. "Fire!" I shouted. All ships opened fire. Full spread. Fleet obeyed. 11,600 warships released their weapons at once. It was the single largest coordinated attack in the history of organized warfare anywhere in the known galaxy. Plasma lances the size of mountains. Antimatter torpedoes with the power of small suns. Kinetic spears traveling at nearly the speed of light, each one carrying enough force to crack a planet in half. The attack was so bright on our sensors that the screens had to dim themselves to keep our eyes from burning. Every single weapon stopped. Not slowed, not deflected, stopped. Frozen in space as if someone had paused a recording. Billions of tons of ordnance hung motionless in the dark, glowing softly, going nowhere. I could not breathe. I stood on my bridge and I watched the impossible, and I could not breathe. Then the weapons began to move again, but not toward Earth. They began to drift gently, slowly, almost lazily back toward my own fleet. The speed was wrong. It was not the speed of a weapon returning fire. It was the speed of a leaf floating on a stream. It took them nearly an hour to make the return trip. And during that hour, no human ship appeared, no human voice spoke. We simply watched our own deaths drift toward us in slow motion, and we could do nothing to stop them. Some of my captains tried. They turned Their ships and ran, their engines exploded the moment they tried to enter. Slipstream, not failed, exploded as if someone had simply decided that these ships would not be leaving today. Other captains tried to shoot down their own incoming weapons. The weapons refused to be shot. Plasma bolts passed through them like light through clear water. Kinetic rounds bent around them in impossible curves. Every defensive system we had was rendered useless, and no one even seemed to be trying hard. Against us it felt lazy. That is the word. It felt lazy, the way a grown man might shoo away a small fly without looking up from his reading. Our own weapons struck our own ships. I expected the shields to hold. Our shields are the pride of the Dominion, the strongest energy barriers ever built by any known species, capable of absorbing the fire of 100 warships for nearly a full minute before failing. They had been tested in 1,000 battles and never once been penetrated. On the first strike, the shields dropped, every single shield, across the entire fleet at exactly the same moment. They dropped politely the way a servant bows and steps aside to let a master pass. Later I would learn that the humans had sent what they called a courtesy update to our shield systems while our weapons were still in flight. Our shields had received the update, thanked the humans for it, and obediently turned themselves off. Our own computers had betrayed us in less than 4 minutes, and they had done it with what the humans called good manners. The weapons struck, the fleet began to come apart. But even then, even in that final nightmare, the humans were not finished showing me what they were, because the ships did not explode the way ships should explode. They came apart gently. Sections peeled away like the skin of soft fruit. Crews were somehow pulled out of the breaches without dying, floating in the vacuum inside perfect small bubbles of air that should not have existed. Thousands of my soldiers were being saved, scooped out of their dying ships by an invisible hand, sorted into neat groups and left to wait in the void. They were being rescued by the enemy, while that same enemy destroyed their ships. I watched young Talon's cruiser come apart. I watched the small bubble form around him and his crew. I watched them drift alive and unharmed through the wreckage of what had been one of my proudest vessels. I saw his face through the bubble. He was not afraid. He was confused. He was looking around as if he had woken up in the wrong bed, blinking, trying to understand where he was. Then a human ship appeared beside him. It was small, no bigger than one of our shuttles, and it had soft, round edges and a friendly shape. A hatch opened. The bubble floated inside. The hatch closed. The human ship flew away, and Talon was gone, saved from my war by the very people I had come to destroy. Verk fell to his knees beside me. He was weeping. Tears ran down the plates of his young face, and he did not bother to hide them. "Overseer," he said, "please, please, my Lord, call them, beg them. They will listen. They do not want to hurt us. Please." I looked at him. I looked at my burning fleet. I looked at the quiet blue planet, still untouched, still far away, laughing somewhere in the dark. And for the first time in 600 years, I did not know what to do. Varak's tears fell on the metal floor of the bridge, and I stared at them because I could not bear to look at anything else. 600 years of pride can break a being in half when it falls all at once. I felt something inside me crack, a long, slow crack like ice giving way under a foot. Around me, my fleet was finishing its death. Ships that had conquered worlds were drifting apart in silence. Humans had taken every soldier out of every broken vessel, one by one the way a careful gardener removes insects from a plant before pruning it. Not one Catherine's soul had been permitted to die. That was the part I could not accept. They were breaking my empire without breaking my people, and I understood at last what Kelvin had tried to tell me before he took his own life. You cannot fight what does not want to harm you. Hatred is a door, kindness has no door. There is nowhere to push against. The main channel opened without my permission. A third human voice came through, and this one was different from the others. It was older, calm, careful, the voice of a person who is used to speaking to frightened animals. Overseer Zethar Van, the voice said. My name is Henry. I am going to come aboard your ship now. I would like to speak with you face to face. Please do not order your guards to attack me. It will only be embarrassing for everyone involved. I opened my mouth to refuse. Before the word left my tongue, the far wall of my bridge simply changed. There was no flash, no sound, no breach alarm. One moment the wall was solid dark metal, and the next moment a doorway had appeared in it, a plain rectangle of soft white light, and a human stepped through. He was tall for his species, though still shorter than any Cathern. He had gray hair on the top of his head and lines around his eyes from smiling, and he wore simple dark clothes that had no markings or badges. He carried nothing. No weapon, no shield, not even a data pad. His hands were empty and they hung loose at his sides the way a man's hands hang when he is walking through his own garden. My guards raised their weapons. Henry looked at them and raised one eyebrow, the way a teacher looks at a child who is about to do something foolish. The guards' weapons turned to flowers, real flowers, small blue flowers with yellow centers, held in the hands of soldiers who a moment ago had been holding plasma rifles. The guards stared at the flowers. The flowers did not stare back because they were flowers, but the effect was the same. Henry walked past them without a glance. He stopped in front of me and he looked up into my eyes because I am more than twice his height, and he smiled. It was a gentle smile. It was the worst thing I have ever seen. Hello, Zethar, he said. May I sit? I did not answer. I could not. My tongue had stopped working. Henry took this as permission. He waved his hand and a chair appeared behind him, a simple wooden chair with a soft cushion. He sat down on it. He crossed his legs. He folded his hands in his lap. I know this is a lot, he said kindly. I know your whole world has just turned upside down. Take your time. I am not in a hurry. Varak, still on the floor, made a small broken sound and pressed his forehead to the metal. Sella, the sensor officer, had stopped moving entirely, as if she hoped that by holding still she might disappear. The rest of my crew were frozen in their places, staring at the small human who had walked through a wall and was now sitting comfortably in the middle of my war bridge. I found my voice at last. It came out as a whisper. What are you? Henry tilted his head. That is a fair question. It deserves a fair answer. Would you like the short version or the long one? The true one. He nodded. Good choice, all right. Then he paused as if arranging his thoughts. 43 of our years ago, humanity reached a turning point. We had built machines that could think. we had built. Networks that connected every mind on our planet. We had found ways to chain the shape of our own thoughts, all of these things came together at once, and something new happened. We call it the awakening. It is not a good name. There is no good name for what it was. We stopped being what we had been. We became something else. And what is that something else? Henry smiled again. We are still figuring that out, but I can tell you what we are not. We are not conquerors. We are not gods. We are not interested in ruling other worlds or taking other people's things. We have everything we need. We have more than everything we need. We have so much that the idea of wanting more seems strange to us now, like being hungry after a very large meal. The body is simply not built for it. Then why? I asked. My voice was louder. Now, anger was coming back into me, slow and hot. If you are so peaceful, why did you do this? Why did you break my fleet? Why did you humiliate my people? Henry's smile faded. He leaned forward slightly and his eyes changed. They became very old, older than the oldest Catherine I had ever met, older than anything I could measure. Zethar, he said softly, I did not break your fleet. I want you to understand that I am not the one who did this. The children did this. Children? Yes, our children, our young ones. When your fleet crossed into the outer ring of our system, it was felt by every human mind connected to the shared layer, which is all of us. Most of us barely noticed. An adult, when a small insect flies into the room, does not usually react, but the children, Zethar, the children felt your fear. 40 million frightened Catherine souls, all packed into warships, all coming toward their home. The children could feel every one of your soldiers. They could feel Talon wondering if he would ever see his mother again. They could feel Varric hiding his tears from you. They could feel your own fear, which you have been hiding even from yourself for 3 days. It gave them nightmares. It was making them cry, so they asked us to make it stop. He paused. He let the words sit in the air. This entire event, he said, this destruction of the greatest fleet in galactic history was a cleanup. Tidying. It was done by the parents of scared children who wanted to sleep. That is all it was. That is all it ever was. I stared at him. I could not speak. Cold, blacker than space, was rising inside me. You are telling me, I said slowly, that my fleet, my pride, my empire's greatest army was not destroyed in a war. It was destroyed because your small ones were having bad dreams. Yes. And we were not even your enemies. No, Zethar, you were never our enemies. You were a disturbance, like a loud neighbor playing music too late at night. We did not hate you. We simply asked you to be quiet when you would not be quiet. We turned the music down ourselves. Something broke in me then, not my pride. My pride was already gone. Something deeper, the belief that I had mattered, the belief that my life had weight, the belief that my 600 years of conquest had meant anything to anyone who truly saw the universe as it was. I had thought I was a great storm crossing the sky. Henry was telling me with kindness that I had been a sneeze, a small animal sound that the real powers of the universe had politely covered up. I sat down. I did not mean to sit. My legs simply gave way, and I fell backward onto my command throne, and I sat there with my hands on my knees like an old man at a window. Henry watched me with patience. He did Not rush, he did not gloat, he gave me the time I needed to let the truth enter me. At last I said, what happens to us now? That is up to you, he said. Your soldiers are safe, all 40 million of them. They are being held gently in small ships of their own, well fed, rested. Most of them are sleeping. Ones who are awake are being spoken to by counselors who understand your language and your culture better than you do. When they wake, they will be returned home, every one of them. Not one will be kept. Not one prisoner. Why would we want prisoners, Zethar? What would we do with them? We do not need slaves. We do not need hostages. We do not need leverage. We are not playing that game. Then why did you not let us leave when we tried to run? Henry's face grew solemn. Because you came armed. If we had let you leave the moment things went badly for you, you would have gone home, rebuilt and tried again, or you would have gone somewhere else and done to another world what you came to do to ours. The lesson had to land. The lesson had to be complete. Your people had to understand that this kind of journey ends only one way, not with glory, not with conquest, not with defeat. Even with this, with a conversation with an old man in a chair explaining to a frightened overseer that he has wasted his life. The word frightened struck me like a blow, but it was the truth. I was frightened. I had frightened since the scout ships disappeared. I had been frightened since Kelvin's warning. I had perhaps always been frightened my whole life and had hidden it behind the noise of my conquests. What do you want from me? I whispered. Henry stood up. The chair folded itself down into nothing and vanished. He stepped closer to my throne and he looked up at me with eyes that held no anger, no triumph, no hate, only a deep, patient, endless kindness. It was worse than any weapon. It was worse than any insult. It was the kindness of someone who had already forgiven me for crimes I had not yet finished understanding. I want you to carry a message home, he said, for your emperor, for your people, for every species in this galaxy who has ever dreamed of taking what is not theirs. And what is the message? He smiled, and it was not a cruel smile. And it was not a gentle smile either. It was something new, something I had no word for. Come with me, Henry said. I will show you. Henry held out his hand. I did not take it. I could not. My arms felt too heavy to lift, as if the air on my own bridge had grown thick. He did not seem offended. He simply lowered his hand and nodded, and the floor beneath my throne changed. The metal softened. The bridge around me blurred, not like a damaged screen, but like a painting that someone was gently wiping away with a wet cloth. Verkincella and all the rest of my crew faded into soft gray light. The walls thinned, the ceiling opened, and then I was not on my ship anymore. I was standing in a field. Real grass, green and soft, pressed against my feet. A wind I had not felt in 100 years moved across my plates. The sky above me was a blue I had seen only in old paintings of forgotten home worlds, the kind of blue that makes a being want to sit down and weep for no reason. There were clouds, small white clouds moving slowly, shaped like animals and like ships and like the faces of children. Henry stood beside me. He looked exactly the same as he had on my bridge. Calm, patient, ordinary. Where am I? I asked. Earth, he said simply, a quiet part of it. I thought you might prefer somewhere without crowds for your first visit. You moved me from orbit to the surface. Without my permission. I am sorry, I could have asked. But I suspected you would say no, and I wanted to show you something that cannot be shown from a bridge. Please walk with me. He began to walk. I followed because I did not know what else to do. My war armor, the one I had inherited from my grandfather's grandfather, had vanished. I was wearing simple gray cloth now, soft against my plates, the kind of garment a Kythran elder might wear in his garden. I did not know when the change had happened. I had not felt it happen, but I was not cold and I was not vulnerable, and somehow I understood that no harm would come to me here. We walked through the grass toward a small hill. At the top of the hill there was a tree. Under the tree there were children, human children. They were small and loud and wild, and they were playing some kind of game that involved a ball and a great deal of running and falling down and laughing. One of them, a boy with dark curls and a scraped knee, saw us coming. He stopped. He looked at me with wide dark eyes. He was not afraid, he was only curious. He ran down the hill toward us at full speed, and I felt my old instincts tighten, the soldier's instincts that had saved my life in 1,000 battles. I did not move. I made myself stand still. The boy stopped 2 steps from me. He looked up and up because I was very tall to him. He tilted his head. "Are you the beetle man?" he asked. I opened my mouth. No words came out. Henry laughed softly beside me. "His name is Zethar," Henry said, "and yes, I suppose he is the beetle man. Be kind, Oliver. He has had a very hard day." Oliver considered me with the serious attention that only small children can give. Then he held up his hand. In it was half a sweet cake, brown and crumbling with something red and sticky in the middle. "You can have some," Oliver said. "Mum makes them. They are good when you are sad." I did not know what to do. I had led armies. I had signed the deaths of worlds. I had stood before the Emperor of Kythran and been praised for my cruelty. And now a human child no higher than my knee was offering me half of his sweet cake because he could see that I was sad. I took the cake. My hands shook. I lifted it to my mouth and I ate it, and the taste was so strange and so sweet and so unlike anything I had ever known that I began to cry, not the small tears of embarrassment I had seen on Verk's face. Real tears, the tears of a being who has just realized that the universe is much larger and much kinder than he had ever allowed himself to believe. Oliver watched me cry with great seriousness. Then he nodded as if something had been confirmed for him, and he ran back up the hill to his friends. He did not look back. Whatever he had wanted to know about me, he had found out, and now there were more important things to do. There was a ball. There was a game. There were friends waiting. Henry gave me a soft cloth from his pocket. I wiped my face. I was ashamed. But it was a clean shame, a light shame. Not the black heavy shame that had crushed me on my bridge. This was the shame of a being who has been seen clearly by a child and has been found worthy of half a cake. "Come," Henry said gently, "there is more." He led me away from the hill. As we walked, the land around us changed, not all at once but smoothly, the way a dream changes. The field became a road. The road became a street. The street filled with buildings, then with people, then with sounds, and soon we were walking through a human city. It was not A city like the ones my scouts had shown me. Those cities had been loud and smoking and crowded with machines. This city was clean and quiet and full of trees. The buildings were tall but gentle, curved instead of sharp, shining without glare. There were no vehicles on the ground. The people walked or rode on soft, silent platforms that floated at the height of their knees. And the people, so many of them, walking past us, laughing, talking, holding each other's hands. Some of them saw me. Few of them stared. Most of them smiled politely and kept walking. One older woman with silver hair bowed her head slightly as she passed. A young man with a musical instrument on his back winked at me and said, "Welcome to Earth, neighbor," and kept going without breaking his stride. Neighbor, he had called me neighbor, not invader, not enemy, neighbor. Why are they not afraid of me? I asked. Because there is nothing to fear. Henry said, you cannot harm anyone here. Even if you tried, the systems around you simply will not permit it, so there is no reason for them to be afraid. They treat you the way you are, Zethar. Visitor, a new face, someone who has come from far away and looks a little different. They know what I came here to do. Yes, they know, they have seen everything you have done. They have read the records of your wars. They know about the worlds you have burned. They know about the peoples you have broken. And they still call me neighbor. Yes. Why? Henry stopped walking. We were on a small bridge over a stream of clear running water. He leaned against the railing and looked down at the water. Small silver fish moved in it. A bird with long legs stood near the bank, watching the fish with the patient eye of a hunter who has no real need to hunt. Because we learned something during the awakening, Henry said at last, we learned that every being everywhere is the same being wearing a different shape. The grass under your feet is you. The fish in this water are you. The child who gave you the cake is you. I am you. You are me. The Kythran Dominion is us. We are the Dominion. There is no division. There is only the one wearing many faces, pretending not to know itself. That is a philosophy. It is a fact we checked carefully for many years, and once you know the fact, Zethar, it becomes impossible to hate. It becomes impossible to fear. It becomes impossible even to take pride in victory, because victory over another is only ever victory over yourself. Your pain is our pain. Your fear was felt by our children. Your shame is in this air. Between us, we did not destroy your fleet to humiliate you. We did it to protect you from yourself. You were about to do a terrible thing. And if you had done it, you would have carried the weight of it forever. We did not let you. It was a gift. I did not answer. The bird by the water made a small sharp movement and came up with a fish in its beak. It swallowed the fish. It looked at me with one bright eye as if to say, yes, I understand the lesson is about peace. But I still have to eat. Henry saw my expression and smiled. The world is still the world. Creatures still eat. Things still die. We have not made a paradise. We have only stopped lying to ourselves about what we are. There is a difference. He pushed off the railing. We kept walking. He took me to many places that day. I do not know how many. Time moved strangely. In the human city, we visited a great hall where thousands of humans sat together in silence, all of them thinking the same thought, weaving something invisible that Henry said was a new kind of music that would be heard by beings not yet born. We visited a garden where old humans sat in the sun and taught small robots how to be kind. We visited a school where children were learning to speak the language of whales, and the whales were learning to speak the language of children, and both were patient with each other's mistakes. Everywhere we went, the humans were not what I had been told they were. They were not fragmented, they were not primitive, they were not cruel, they had only pretended to be for the benefit of scouts and spies so that the galaxy would leave them alone. The real humanity lived underneath, quiet in gentleness, in a deep and endless exchange of thought between every member of their species and every creature that lived beside them. They had not conquered their world, they had made peace with it. There is a difference, and that difference was everything. At the end of the day, Henry brought me to a simple room with a wooden table and 2 chairs. He set a cup of hot dark liquid in front of me. He sat across from me with a cup of his own. Now, he said, we need to talk about the message. Yes, and about what you are going to do when you get home. I picked up the cup. It was warm in my hand. Steam rose from it and touched my face. I took a small sip. It was bitter, and it was also good, and somehow those 2 things were not in conflict. I set the cup down. Tell me, I said. I am ready to listen now. Henry leaned back in his chair, and for the first time all day, he looked tired. Not weak, only tired the way a parent looks tired at the end of a long day with a difficult child. Good, he said, because the message is long and you are going to need to remember every word. Henry took a slow breath, and the room seemed to lean in with him. I sat very still, my hands around the warm cup, and I waited the way a student waits when a true teacher is about to speak. The message has 3 parts, he said. The first part is for your emperor. The second part is for your people. The third part is for every civilization in this galaxy that has ever looked at a weaker world and thought about taking it. You will carry all 3 parts home. You will speak them aloud in your own voice to everyone who will listen, and then you will live the rest of your life as proof that the message is true. Do you accept this task? I looked down at the steam rising from the cup. I thought of my emperor, old and proud, sitting on his throne of black stone. I thought of my people, millions of them across 1,000 worlds, raised on stories of our own greatness. I thought of the galaxy beyond, full of empires that still believed the way I had believed only yesterday. The task was too large for 1 Cathar and too large for 100. I accept, I said. Henry nodded. He seemed neither pleased nor surprised. Then listen carefully. The first part for your emperor. Tell him this. Tell him that humanity sends its greetings and its quiet warning. We do not wish to rule him. We do not wish to trade with him or to teach him or to change him. We wish only to be left alone. He will find, if he looks, that his empire does not need Earth. It has survived 40,000 years without us. It can survive 40,000 more. But it will not survive if it comes back. Tell him this gently. Tell him this without shame. He is an old being, and old beings are proud. Give him room to accept the truth without losing face. I will tell him. Second part for your people. Tell them that their soldiers are coming home. All 40 million. Not one has been kept. Not one has been harmed. They will arrive in Their own ships repaired and improved. Within 30 of your days, they will bring story. Some of those stories will be strange, some will be hard to believe. Tell your people to listen anyway. Tell them that the soldiers have seen something real and that what they saw is not a threat to your way of life unless your way of life requires harming others. If it does, then yes, the truth is a threat, but only in that way, only to cruelty, not to the Cathar and themselves. I will tell them. The third part is the longest. Henry paused. He took a sip of his own cup. This part is for everyone else, for the Var and the Lumendrith and the architects and the 97 other species who have ever sent an armed ship toward our world, for every civilization that has ever dreamed of conquest. The message is this: we are here. We have always been here. We were here when your ancestors first learned to count the stars. We have watched you grow. We have watched you fight. We have watched you build and break and build again. We have never spoken because we wish to respect your journey. We still wish to respect it, but we will not allow that journey to end at our door with weapons drawn. We will not allow it, not because we are offended, but because it is a waste of your fleet, a waste of your time, a waste of a journey you could have spent becoming something greater than conquerors. You are all capable of more. Every species we have watched has shown us moments of astonishing beauty. We remember those moments. We treasure them. We wish you would treasure them too, more than you treasure your victories. He stopped. He looked at me carefully. Can you carry all of that, Zethar? I can carry it, I said. I do not know if I can make them listen. That is not your task. Your task is only to deliver. What grows from the seed is not the work of the hand that plants it. Do your part and let the rest of the galaxy do theirs. Some will listen, some will not. That is how it has always been in every garden on every world. He finished his cup and set it down. Then he stood up. It is time to take you home. I rose with him. My legs felt strange, lighter than they had felt in decades. I realized I was not afraid. I had been afraid my whole life, and I had called that fear strength, and now the fear was gone, and what was left was something quieter, something I did not yet have a name for. Henry walked me to the door of the small room. He opened it. Beyond it was not a hallway, but my own bridge. Verk looked up from where he still knelt on the floor. Sella turned from her station. My crew, all of them, stared at me with the pale faces of people who had spent hours believing their commander was gone forever. I stepped through. The door closed behind me and vanished. Henry was no longer with me, but in my mind, clear as a bell. I could feel the message he had given me, folded carefully inside me, like a letter sealed with wax. Overseer Verk whispered, Are you all right? Yes, Verk, I said, for the first time in 600 years I am all right. Bring us about. We are going home. The journey back took 3 days. I was told later by my engineers that it should have taken 3 years because the humans had not only repaired my flagship, but had added new engines whose workings no Cathar and scientists could understand. The ship moved through slipstream in ways our physics said were impossible. The engineers were frightened by this. I was not. The humans had given us a gift, and the gift was also a reminder. We flew home in their strange, quiet engines, and every turn of the journey was a lesson in how small we had always been. I used those 3 days to practice. I spoke the message aloud over and over in the empty corridors of my ship. I corrected my voice, I softened my tone, I found the places where my old pride tried to creep back in and change the words, and I cut those places out. I was going to deliver the message clean. I owed Henry that. I owed Oliver, the boy with the sweet cake. I owed Kelvin, who had tried to warn me and had died of shame when I would not listen. When we reached Cathar in space, the Emperor himself came out to meet me. This had never happened before in the history of our empire. An emperor does not leave his throne world. An emperor does not fly out in a royal cruiser to greet a returning officer, but he did. He came because rumors had already reached him, carried by the small, fast ships of the humans, who had politely sent word ahead. 40 million Cathar and soldiers returning home alive. A fleet of 12,000 warships reduced to one. The greatest overseer in living memory, coming back with no victory and no dead to mourn. The emperor had to see for himself, so he came. I landed on his cruiser. I walked into his throne chamber. I knelt before him and I placed my forehead on the cold stone of the floor, the way a child kneels before a parent, not the way an officer kneels before a lord. Rise, Zethar, he said. His voice was old and careful. I rose. Speak. I spoke for 6 hours. I told him everything. The scout ships moved across 400 light years in a single minute. The weapons that stopped in midair. The human ship that saved young Tellen from the vacuum. The old human named Henry, who walked through my wall. The boy Oliver and his half of a sweet cake. The bird with the fish. The bridge over the clear water. The room with the hot dark drink. And then I delivered the message, all 3 parts, exactly as Henry had given it to me. When I was finished, the emperor did not speak for a long time. His advisors stood around the throne, their faces pale. Some of them were young and angry. Some were old and afraid. One of them, the youngest, opened his mouth to protest, to demand a second war, to call me a coward and a traitor. The emperor silenced him with a single raised finger. The emperor sat in silence for a full hour. Then he stood. He walked down from his throne. He came to me and he placed his hand on my shoulder, the way Kelvin had once placed his hand on my shoulder many years ago when I was still young enough to listen. Zethar, the emperor said, you have done the hardest thing a Cathar has ever done. You have come home without a victory, and you have told the truth. I do not know if I would have had the courage. Thank you. I began to weep for the second time in my new life. The emperor let me weep. He did not turn away. He was old and proud. And he was also, I realized then, wiser than I had ever given him credit for. He had been waiting, perhaps for centuries, for someone to bring him a truth larger than his empire, and now the truth had arrived, carried in the voice of his most arrogant overseer, and he had accepted it with grace. That night the emperor ordered the Dominion to stand down. Every war, every invasion, every subjugation campaign across 3 galactic arms ended in a single decree. The older species watched in disbelief. The conquered called an emergency session. The VAR sent a delegation bearing flowers instead of treaties. The Lumendrith wrote a song in our honor. The architects who had not spoken in 10,000 years sent a single short message that read, "Welcome to the quiet." I spent the rest of my long life as the ambassador of humility. I traveled from world to world. I told my story. I delivered Henry's message again and again in throne rooms and council halls, and on the open streets of worlds I had never thought I would see as anything other than a conqueror. Some listened, some did not. A few civilizations laughed and sent their own fleets toward Earth because pride is an old sickness, and no cure works on every patient. Those fleets never came back. Not one ship, not one message. Earth did not speak of them afterward. It simply, politely erased them from its evening news the way a careful host tidies away a broken dish without drawing attention to the guest who dropped it. I am writing this now from a small room. On a quiet moon, my plates have gone gray, my eyes are dim. I am old even for a Cathar, and I will not live much longer. The humans sent a visitor last week, a young woman named Emma, who brought me a pot of small blue flowers, the same kind of flowers my guards had held long ago when Henry walked through my wall. She did not say why she had brought them. She only smiled and placed them on my windowsill and left. Every morning now I look at those flowers. I think of Oliver and his sweet cake. I think of the bird by the clear water. I think of the message Henry gave me and of how small it felt and how heavy and how true. The galaxy is not what I thought it was. It never was. Somewhere in the dark on a quiet blue world around a quiet yellow star, there are beings who could unmake us all with a stray thought, and who choose every single day not to. They choose gentleness. They choose patience. They choose to let us have our little empires and our little pride for as long as we need them, until we are ready to set them down. That is the greatest power I have ever seen. It is not the power to destroy. It is the power to refuse to destroy when destroying would be easy. I am Zethar Van. I led the greatest invasion in the history of my people. I lost it in a single afternoon to children who were having bad dreams. I learned that I had wasted 600 years of a long life on a ladder that led nowhere. And I learned at the very end that it is never too late to climb down from that ladder and walk instead through a field of grass toward a hill where children are laughing. If you are reading this, whoever you are, whatever your species, whatever your empire, hear me now. Do not go to Earth with weapons. Do not go there with pride. Do not go there at all unless you are invited. And if you are invited, go quietly and bring nothing but your open hands. There's a boy there named Oliver. He may offer you half of his sweet cake. Take it. It is the best thing you will ever taste.